as
Sorry, I
okay.
forgot to set it earlier.
As Master Jeff Allen is going to impart all of the wisdom on us, it is my job to just remind everybody, I guess, or make you maybe aware of some of those national rebates that Tamron has going on right now, for which I am dropping a link. Oh, hold on a sec. Dropping a link in the chat right now. For that, so you can see those. Those would all be available through Looking Glass at Looking Glass. Of course, one of the things that if you're local or even semi-local that you can take advantage of with Looking Glass, and actually not only Looking Glass, but Looking Glass is one of the few Tamron partners that are partaking in a trade-up promo going on right now. So if you are in the Sony mirrorless market, then you definitely want to reach out to Looking Glass and talk to these guys about, you know, what that is and what the options are. So that is my piece. And so without taking up any more time, although we do still have folks coming into the meeting, it looks like. We real quick, Jen and I, as we get started, as Jeff gets started, we do ask that everybody mute both your video and your audio. This helps cut down on any kind of interference during Jeff's presentation, and you know, won't mess with bandwidth or anything like that. So if you guys could turn off video and audio, that'd be great. Any questions that you guys have, go ahead and put those in the chat. Jen and I will be rounding those up, and we're going to do questions for Jeff at the end. So yeah, that's my piece. Anything else that you want to add, Jen, before we turn it over?
I'm going to add one more thing really quickly. I'm just going to let everybody know Jeff is actually joining us from Colorado today. So Katrine, if you're looking for inspiration for a trip to Colorado in August, I think Jeff will be able to assist with that.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, guys, I'm stoked. This is Jeff from Tamron. I'm going to let you roll with it. I'm going to go ahead and mute my video and audio, and folks, just throw those questions into the chat. If they're pertinent to what Jeff is talking about at the moment, we may interrupt him. But other than that, we're going to keep most of the questions for the end. Thank you guys for being with us.
Okay, I guess I'll take it from here. Get my sharing going here, and hit play, and we should be good. Welcome everybody. If you're not familiar with Tamron, and you know, by now, if you're in photography, you probably are, but just in case, we are just celebrated our 70th anniversary last November. So we're kind of, you know, new lens introductions in 2021 are kind of 70th anniversary lenses, even though we're not doing, you know, because of the times, we're not doing any big introductory promotions or anything, but a lot of fun with that. And I've been with Tamron in my present position about 17 years, and 10 years almost before that. And, you know, going back into my, you know, sales counter retail days, decades before that even. So I've been affiliated in some way or another with the company for a long time. Today, we're going to talk about getting out and going to national parks. And I've kind of expanded it because state parks are also great to go to, of course, and even sometimes city parks. So you'll see a smattering of photos from all kinds of parks, and I hope to throw some inspiration at you. As Jen mentioned, I'm a little north of Denver in Fort Collins, Colorado, and one of my favorite backyard places. You know, I'm less than an hour from Rocky Mountain National Park, which is starting to get overrun. But there was an Army munitions depot that was founded back, I think, around World War I, and was finally shut down in the 80s or so. And the land was, you know, not really suitable for housing. There was one time thinking of expanding the Denver airport onto it. What they finally settled on was turning it into a national wildlife refuge, and it's been wildly successful. There there's a bison herd that keeps growing, and now they're getting to the point where they're actually, donating their bison to other herds to keep other herds more biologically diverse too. So that's a cool thing. And it attracts all kinds of wildlife. There were already deer living there natively, and all the things that go with that: coyotes and raptors and birds of all sorts and foxes. So it's a fun place to visit. And I often, when I'm back in the before times, when I would drive to the airport to fly to do in-person events, I was actually stopping there regularly, either on the way to the airport or on the way home, and driving through and seeing what I could see, because it's always different, of course. So it's a lot of fun. So don't just think of having to fly or drive halfway across the country. There may be great parks or preserves in your region that are within a short drive that make for great day trips and things like that too. Again, I am Tamron Tech Jeff. If you'd like to follow me on social, or if you have a question that you'd like to send me via direct message, I usually see those on Facebook or Instagram pretty quickly. They kind of lag somewhat for some reason on Twitter. But you can always drop me a note that way too, if you have a particular question about either photography or technology or Tamron in particular. I'm pretty well versed and can help you out there. So once again, before I get too deep in, thanks so much to Jen and all the staff at Looking Glass for welcoming us all in today for the presentation. It's always nice to visit there and shop there, and I'm sure I'll be back when travel is more readily accessible to us, and I think Tamron is already making plans to get me back out on the road for the second half of the year. So hope to see some of you in person as well. We're going to get started. Just some brief things. Of course, it's always good to be familiar with your camera. Don't take your owner's manual with you and sit in the park and try to figure out how to do things. Try and get familiar with your camera before you leave. Know the basics, the important things: how to control your shutter speed, your aperture, ISO, of course. Those are the main things that are needing to be controlled. So important things there. Learn how those all interact and relate to one another, and you'll just be more successful. Play with your camera on a regular basis, even if it's just running out into your backyard or to a nearby park. It's always good to be up with the camera. You get into your car and you drive it maybe on a daily basis, so you're very familiar with where all the controls are and how everything in the car functions. If you've made a significant investment in photography, and you probably have, if you're watching this, be sure and take that time to be really familiar with your camera, so you just have more fun with it, and more things are natural and instinctual to you, or you have that muscle memory when you're making photos, so you're not fumbling for things, and it makes your outings more pleasant. Just a few basics. Composition, I always like to throw out the rule of thirds. So important. A lot of cameras nowadays even have a grid screen that you can turn on that will show up either on the view screen on the back of the camera or the viewfinder, or both. Again, the folks at Looking Glass can help you find that on your camera if it has that feature or function. And it just helps you create more dynamic photos. If you can get a strong part of the photo to happen about a third of the way in from the bottom and about a third of the way in from one of the sides or the top, you're going to have stronger photos that linger, that allows the viewer to linger longer. That's the important thing, especially in these days of social media, where it's maybe somebody's eyes are on your photo for a tenth of a second. If you can keep that to maybe a full second or longer, you've been wildly successful in creating great photos. The image here, of course, from Zion's The Watchman, has this was created by one of my colleagues at Tamron, and this has been sold a number of times. and used in advertising and brochures, for instance. So if you think of monetizing your photos, sometimes it is important to leave part of the scene blank too, so that an ad copy can be put over that or something like that. So it's not just about creating a strong photo, but sometimes creating a photo that can be used for editorial purposes, which might lead to some financial gain for you. Pardon me, selling photos in the stock market has become brutal. It used to be back when I had a stock photo agency that I was with, I had a good healthy side income from selling photos. Now that has dwindled a lot because there are so many stock photo agencies, micro agencies on the internet, where if you post your photos, you might get a nickel or a dime or a quarter or maybe $1 if you're really lucky. But sometimes it can lead to things too. So keep that in mind with your photography. Another cool compositional basic that I like to talk about, especially for landscape and nature, is leading lines. Of course, out here at the Wave in Kanab, Arizona. This shot, it's permitted. They only allow a few people in a day. It's a complicated process, but if you're one of the lucky ones and take that fairly long hike out there, you get some spectacular image making possibilities. And my friend Andre popped up in the scene here, and this wasn't a straight, I'll talk more about composition. It wasn't a straight horizontal or vertical shot. I thought this would look kind of cool as a diagonal. So that happened. And obviously he's not standing off at an angle like that without falling over. But keep that in mind for your creative usage too. Always look for those lines that will bring the viewer's eye into the scene, and again, try and bring something in from the edge or just above or below a corner, and lead it into somewhere near the middle of the photo, or in this case, kind of off to the other side of the photo. So keep those kinds of compositional things in mind. Now, getting to Tamron lenses and lenses in general, you may not have any Tamron lenses in your bag, although you might be surprised to learn that there might be Tamron DNA inside your lens. We are the world's largest independent lens manufacturer. We build 7 to 10 million lenses a month. And so it's a big deal. And what that allows us to do is have economy of scale. We do a lot of OEM business, which means that our maybe lenses are completely designed and purchased by another company that they put their name on. Sometimes there are major components inside their lenses. So even if you don't own a Tamron, there's a good chance that there's Tamron DNA running around inside what you're making your photos with. So again, obviously I'm with Tamron, so we're going to talk about our lenses, and you may have similar lenses in your camera bag that you can be equally successful with. We'll start with our lens designations because they can be confusing. Sometimes, even when I'm doing, product training for sales associates in stores, sometimes they need a little refresher. So I'm going to give that to you as well. We have 3 basic designations. DI is our digitally integrated, is what the acronym is, and it originally meant lenses that were optimized for digital cameras. Now, of course, everything is optimized for digital now. We don't make any lenses that are old enough to still have been built with film photography in mind. So there's that. And the DI lenses, now the DI lens designation is a little more specific, meaning that DI lenses are lenses that are for full frame cameras for traditional DSLRs, and they're going to give the biggest circle of light output. So with direct fit or with adapters, like say if you're merging or transitioning from traditional SLRs to mirrorless style camera bodies via the body makers adapters or via good quality aftermarket adapters. There are a lot of ways that you can put Tamron lenses on cameras that they weren't initially intended for, and that allows the DI lenses, again, allow the greatest amount of versatility and connectivity that way. DI2 lenses are optimized for that smaller APS-C size sensor that a lot of consumer cameras use. It's a more affordable sensor size, and a lot of us own those crop sensor cameras. I'm fortunate in that I have a wide variety of full frame and crop sensor cameras at my disposal. And the DI2 lenses tend to be a little bit smaller, lighter, oftentimes more versatile to complement those smaller, lighter camera body sizes. This is if you've ever been to Spokane, south of Spokane is an area of the U.S. called the Palouse, and it has the most amazing light I've ever found photographing almost anywhere for landscape. And there's this big butte called Steptoe Butte in the middle of this farmland, and it's just rolling farmland with a mountain range east and west of it, and so you get a lot of nice clouds, which adds to the quality of the light, I think, and that and the rolling farmland. It's a wonderful place to travel to and photograph. And again, it's a state park, so that's something to consider looking at. Back to Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Park again, or Wildlife Preserve, I should say. I go there a lot. This was late last summer when the baby bison, the red dogs as they call them, were just starting to lose that original coat of that's a reddish color, and bring in their summer coat before that leads off to the winter coat. But just a nice little shot of this critter. And this is with the DI3 lens. Now, DI3 is our designation for mirrorless specific lenses. And the majority of our mirrorless lenses in our product lineup are for Sony cameras, because Sony has opened up licensing for manufacturers to allow independents like Tamron to build lenses to fit their cameras. So we have the widest variety of lenses. We do have an all-in-one lens, for instance, for micro four thirds. So if you're a Panasonic or Olympus user, we haven't completely forgotten about you, but it is also, again, kind of about market share and things like that. So, from a factory standpoint, our board of directors is going to look at where the majority of the product that we can easily fit to lives. So that's that. And then again, some more shooting suggestions. Start early. We were in San Antonio for a national photographers convention a couple of years ago, and of course that takes up the entire day. So you have to get out before sunrise or in the evening to sometimes make shots. Now that also allows things for like morning mist to be happening that you could photograph with, and I'll mention a couple more times throughout the presentation. Bad weather, and this wasn't bad weather by any means. It was nice and warm. It was just kind of light fog, but bad weather can make for great photographs. So don't put the camera away when you're photographing. Get out early, get out, stay out late, and see what you can find in the night skies. Again, I'm where I live in northern Colorado. I'm about a 45-minute drive from an internationally recognized dark sky area, the Pawnee National Grasslands, and this was at a campground right at the edge of the grassland area. And I was out photographing in this situation, and somebody got up to drive their car from their campsite over to the facilities. And I originally thought, well, this is going to be a ruined shot, but I did stop shooting. I let that happen, and it turned out nice to have that lower fringe of the photo illuminated or light painted almost by the vehicle's headlights, and it gave me some structure there at the bottom of the photo that added a nice little anchor point. So again, if you can avoid it, take extra memory, don't delete in the field. And sometimes those things that you think are going to be throwaways, those shots end up becoming keepers. Also, have you ever considered spending an entire day in one location? Again, one of my colleagues, Andre, did this sequence out in the toadstools at the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and they spent a whole day there from like midday one day through the afternoon into the dusk and overnight hours, and then got up at dawn and into the early morning and back to midday, and shot within probably 150 yards from where they started. Never had to move too much, and got some just fantastic different photos, different times of the day, different light, clearer skies, cloudier skies. Of course, the night sky with the starlight is always great. Little light painting there with a flashlight on that shot in the center, and also let's see, on the shot in the lower right, that had just a smidgen of flashlight light painting in it too. So those kinds of things work a subject really well. And if you have a unique subject like this and you have the time, spend a lot of money traveling through and maybe just staying in a single location and working the scene. Not all national parks are out in faraway places. The Gateway National Park in St. Louis, Missouri, right at the edge of downtown St. Louis, between downtown and the Missouri or the Mississippi River as it flows through the city there. And this is another thing, I will always look on Google, and I'll go in when I get to a town, I'll ask locals, where's a neat place to shoot. I'll even look at picture postcards to see what other photographers have done. And then I'll say, well, that shot of the arch from taken across the river where you see all of downtown is great. I don't necessarily want to go to East St. Louis, Illinois, for certain personal safety reasons. Maybe I've done it a couple of times, but again, that's someplace you want to travel not by yourself. It's what they would call a bad neighborhood, unfortunately. But again, I stayed on the St. Louis side. Also, I was walking. I didn't have a car because I was at an event just near the Gateway Arch. But I got out at dusk after the event had concluded for the day, and again, that beautiful blue hour from maybe sunset to 60 to 90 minutes after sunset, you get that beautiful cobalt blue sky. Here's a little tip. I will often set my camera's custom white balance to a preset, and I will go to the incandescent setting, and that makes the sky, because it's correcting for yellow, it makes the sky that even deeper looking blue, so you have to do less in post later on too, but it gives you some ideas. And again, work that subject, get close, shoot it from different angles, maybe shoot it from an edge, and again, that I was literally traveling without a tripod that night because I wasn't expecting to get out and shoot that late. I leaned up against the side of the structure and pointed the camera basically straight up to get that shot in the lower left hand or the lower right hand side of the image there. So again, even if you're working, maybe you left the tripod at home, you forgot to bring it, you can lean on things. You can find a rock or a park bench or a picnic table or something to set the camera up if you need to do longer exposures. And then again, if you're traveling, do take a nice travel tripod with you. Or maybe, again, I carry usually a small tripod, and I'll carry a bigger tripod. The folks at Looking Glass can certainly help you choose what's going to work best for you in tripods. And it may be, eventually over time you end up with multiples for different applications, as I have over the years. Always look for good storytelling subjects in your photography. Again, my colleague Jared lives in metropolitan DC, and this Air Force Memorial Park in Virginia is right near his home. So he'll wander down there and shoot occasionally to see what's going on. And again, he picked a nice partly cloudy day. I love, if I'm shooting daytime, I pray for nice puffy innocuous cumulus clouds in the sky like this, because they make such great skies in the background backgrounds of your photos. And again, look at your compositions, look for that flow, that you've got some nice things that act as leading lines. Look for something that offers reflections. Reflections can make great photos too, with that polished marble or granite surface there, reflecting the clouds from the sky, as well as showing off what he was photographing there. So think about things like that for your visual storytelling. This happened again. I live in northern Colorado. We had a really a horrific wildfire that started 80 miles or so west of where I live, and ended up over the course of almost 3 months, slowly working its way closer and closer, ended up about 10 miles from where I live. But we lived under smoky skies for almost 3 months, and that made for some spectacular sunrises, sunsets. Use focal length when you're looking for things. I often you don't think of a long telephoto lens like the 150 to 600 for a landscape photography, but that telephoto compression can do some really cool things for you. As you see in these two shots, the shot on the left of the screen was made at about 150 millimeters, the short end of the telephoto. And even at that short telephoto, you can see a little bit of compression in the foreground and the mountain in the further distance. And then when I rack that out to 420 millimeters for composition, that really compressed that scene. So those silhouetted trees in the foreground and at the top of that next ridge over really made for a dramatic composition there and compression of the landscape. And then of course that night I went out and we had about a 3/4 moon, and this wasn't during one of the blood red moons or anything like this. There was so much smoke and particulate matter in the air that I got the moon with that orange color without having to do anything in post. In fact, the camera wanted to correct for it, and I had to go to manual color balance so that the camera stopped trying to correct for it. That's always kind of a fun thing to consider. And you do need a fairly long telephoto like this to get good, crisp shots of the moon. And those sorts of things are easily done with a longer telephoto. So something to consider also. I don't like shooting just the circular disc of the full moon. I like a partial moon like that. I think it's more interesting looking because you have those shadows right at the edge of where the sunlight falls off on that planet. Again, something local to San Francisco, Alcatraz Island. There are tours that go at night. And I was fortunate enough to be there one very kind of misty, foggy, rainy night. Again, there was mist just collecting on my camera like crazy. Most Tamron lenses are moisture sealed, so you have to worry less about that. Check your camera body's owner's manual, or again, check with the folks at Looking Glass to find out if your camera has weather seal also. And if not, there are all sorts of affordable alternatives to give your camera and lenses weather protection so that you can get out and shoot when the weather is less than perfect. The best flower photography I generally do every year is on a rainy day. In nice, soft, even overcast light, the water droplets on the flowers or other flora, and just makes for wonderful things. So again, don't put the camera away if the weather is bad. That orange floodlight, of course, was when the Giants were in the World Series, and all the major iconic buildings around the Bay Area were floodlit in orange that year. So that was kind of a cool thing too. Now, you want to choose the right lens to get the shot, of course. this is an interesting shot. I saw that the clouds were very interesting as my plane approaching the Denver airport was on final, and I thought, boy, that could make for a cool looking sunset. Well, by the time I collected my bags, got to my car, and headed out, I headed straight for this state park, which is on my way home essentially from the Denver airport, and got there just after sunset, as you can see, and the sky just lit up. And in the West, I think we're especially fortunate to have a lot of times when you get spectacular sunsets like this. You get a lot of nice cloud, and that again reflects the and diffuses and refracts the particulate matter that's in the air, and you get these beautiful, cool sunsets like this. And this shot has become a favorite. It's printed behind me here, and so on. So it's something that gets a lot of use. Now let's start with wide angle lenses. Tamron makes a variety of both prime and zoom wide angles. Our zooms are probably our most popular. And again, up at Yosemite, I was there a year ago, February, just before everything went crazy, and I was there for a workshop. So I spent a week, and we had again unseasonably warm, dry weather. And again, Yosemite had a very dry winter last year. I think they did a little bit better with precipitation this year, but got out of the conference, of course, late afternoon, sun's going down, and I see that that half and half exposure on the on Half Dome there. And you also have to think about, when you're shooting, is it going to look better vertical, the way the camera is normally held, or is it going to look better horizontal? Now, again, compositionally here, it just was much better horizontal. So if you're shooting vertical, remember to turn or if you're shooting horizontal, I should say, turn the camera vertical and make both compositions in the camera. When you make prints and enlargements, of course, it doesn't matter when it's on your wall. It's still going to be the same size. 16 by 20 is a 16 by 20. It's just what's the wide end and what's the narrow end. So be sure and look for those kinds of compositions like that. Now, a different day at Yosemite, and here we did have some nice cloud cover, and so I went for this was a morning time shot, kind of the reflection in the lake. If you're looking for water reflections, typically you're going to get clearer, better reflections on water in the morning, because there's less wind blowing, less breeze to put ripples in the water. And there were some ripples in the water, mostly just from the flow of the water rather than anything the breeze was doing. But be sure and look for things like that. And wide angles, of course, in these two shots and in the next shot, are good for giving you that wide panoramic field of view. Also, when you go to popular places in national parks, like Mesa Arch here in Canyonlands, you can leave your hotel room at 2 or 3 in the morning, hike out there in the dark, and think, wow, I've gotten here early. I'm going to get that prime spot. And there's already maybe 25 or 50 photographers who got out a few minutes ahead of you and thought the same thing. So, the classic shot, especially in the wintertime like this, that everybody looks for, is that sun between the far horizon and the bottom of the arch. And again, you've seen that iconic shot a number of times. We couldn't elbow our way in to get that shot, so we patiently waited. All the people who had gotten there earlier and got that shot split, and then I was able to get the sun coming over the top of the arch. And the added benefit is, again, that reflection of the light off the valley floor gave that nice reflection underneath the arch, which you don't get if you get that earlier shot nearly so much, because of the angle of the sun. Also, Tamron lenses are made with either 7 or 9 bladed diaphragms, and they stop down to a very nice circular shape. So you get a lot more bursts off of the sun when you include that to get that sunburst in your shot. Now, a little trick here is only use about half the sun. Don't put the full disk of the sun in the frame. It's a good idea to go to a manual exposure. Do your exposure of the foreground. The sun's going to be way overexposed anyway. And then just kind of move it around. You'll see it in the viewfinder. And another tip, if you're using a traditional optical DSLR type camera, I recommend this is a good time to go to your view screen on the back. Go to live view, and so that you're not having that bright pinpoint of light come through the magnification of the optical system and potentially do damage to your vision. So while I'm using a traditional DSLR, I typically shoot at eye level. I don't shoot the live view as frequently. But this is one of those times that I have damage to one of my retinas. So I've learned that this is definitely something that is worthwhile. So again, just a little safety tip there. When you travel, you may have to pay admission fees for private places like Lower Antelope Canyon in the Navajo Tribal Park. This is something where there are tribal guides that you make a reservation these days, and you reserve a time slot, and they take you through the slot canyons. But important thing to remember, and something that we didn't do this particular day. There was a group of us from Tamron all going together as part of a training trip and staff meeting. We got there afternoon. Well, it turns out that they don't allow tripods afternoon because that's when the bigger crowds start to come. So if you're thinking of shooting in the slot canyons, go early if you want to take your tripod. If not, of course, modern cameras can give you great high ISO results, as I had here at ISO 800. And I was able to shoot with the VC stabilization turned on, vibration compensation, at a 30th of a second with my 15 to 30 lens. And of course, I was at about 15 millimeters here. So again, the wider you go, the less necessary stabilization is. But I have friends who can handhold this lens because of the quality of the stabilization down to a half second and a full second. Now, I drink a little bit too much caffeine, so I generally can't go below maybe a tenth of a second to a half second maximum, but it's still amazing to think that with modern cameras and stabilization systems, you can get some incredible handheld, fairly long exposures that weren't available just a few years ago to even consider. Again, if you're doing night sky shots, you want to be careful if you bring a flashlight along. A lot of national parks, especially in the Southwest, are starting to inform photographers that flashlights aren't allowed because at least for photo purposes, like we did here, where we literally sent somebody down to that arch and had them, do a couple of loops with the flashlight over the course of 10 seconds to get that additional illumination. But the thing is, you could be goofing up other people's photographs and they don't want that flashlight in their shot. So that's a consideration to make too. Be kind to other people. If there are others out there and you're going to turn on a flashlight, let them know so that maybe you have to wait 30 seconds until their exposure is over so that you don't mess up their shot, because again, they've taken a lot of time and effort to get to these remote locations sometimes. So that's an important thing to always be polite to others. The normal and prime lenses are the next category. And again, we have primes going as wide as 20 millimeters for the Sony mount now, but I included it in kind of this category of the normals and primes, kind of lumping the zooms and the prime lenses together. So again, another shot from the top of Steptoe Butte. This was shot with a circular polarizer to get that wonderful blue sky. A polarizer is a great accessory to take with you. You're going to get bluer skies. You're going to get the clouds to stand out. You can reduce reflections off of water or glass. Even rocks and tree leaves will cause reflections. Anything but metal, as you adjust a circular polarizer, you'll see through the lens what you're getting, or through the viewfinder. And, so what you see is what you get. So you can increase that polarization or back it off a little bit if that's your intention. The polarizer works best at a right angle to the sun. So think of keeping the sun kind of over your shoulder if you want that darker blue sky that I was intending here. And again, right time of day, right direction, and the sun was just off over my shoulder. So it worked out very well for that. It won't always. Polarizers also make for great neutral density if you want to extend the exposure time at dusk or dawn, or even like water features in the middle of the day. Polarizers or neutral density filters can give you longer shutter speeds. Of course, tripods and remote releases start to become necessary when you get into longer exposures like this. So again, up in Acadia, the Pemaquid lighthouse, I think this is called. I may have pronounced that totally incorrectly, but again, just before sunrise, you get that nice, beautiful flow of the water moving for that 30-second exposure. And if you have limitations on how far you can walk or travel, there are very cool. And I just learned this from a friend a week or so ago who posted a photo. There are very cool shots of this lighthouse that you can get from the parking lot even. So you don't necessarily have to get out in the dark and scrambling around on wet, slippery rocks. Rocky Mountain National Park, again, in my backyard, didn't have a long telephoto lens with me as I, was in the car, but these elk kind of popped up over a ridge line, and I thought, well, I'd like to include them in the photo, so I used the fence that they put up to kind of protect the tundra from people, and compose the shot so that I use the fence as a framing device to put the elk in the middle of it. Again, with a fairly short focal length, I was shooting at 24 millimeters here on a full frame sensor. Again, that's a fairly wide field of view. That's about a 75-degree field. So you're going to have to deal with things are going to be small. So by framing the elk in, your brain makes you think they're bigger than they actually are in the frame. I got lucky again there with some nice clouds in the sky. I probably would have cropped it a little differently if it had been a naked sky. Or again, there are a lot of great post-processing programs now that allowed you to add clouds later too if you needed to. But again, Mother Nature was kind to me that day, and so that's how that happened. Again, in kind of near my backyard, Mount Evans, you could drive up to or near the top of Mount Evans, Colorado. There are access fees involved because it's part state, part national park, or national recreation area. And I think this year they're considering putting on a timed entry basis, or limiting the number of people that get in. They're still clearing the snow off the top of the road, so I don't think a final decision has been made yet. This was midsummer, where this was at about 12,000 feet. The little wildflowers were in bloom late afternoon, so I got the nice reflections off of the water that was flowing. And again, those late afternoon clouds reflecting some sunset light. So my preference, if I can shoot landscape, would be early morning, late afternoon. You don't always get that the good fortune if you're traveling. Sometimes you have to go when you can go. Back to Yosemite, again, late afternoon. This was a few paces from that shot you saw a few moments ago, looking at Yosemite Falls there. And again, I put the polarizer on because the sun was just going down and I wanted to get that blue in the sky. You will notice that it fades a little bit on the left-hand side of the shot, and that's because the light, to get the polarization of the scatter of light, even if you're at that angle to the sun where it's kind of over your shoulder, with a wider field of view, a wider angle, you may not get the entire sky polarized. So that's something important if you're using a polarizer to look at as well. But again, just not quite a 2-second exposure to get that flow of the water. I always like to see that. If I've got moving water, I'll try for at least a 1 second, and maybe sometimes as long if I have a neutral density filter with me, or it's very early or late, and the light levels will allow, I'll go to 10 or 15 seconds to get just a kind of a glossier, more ethereal look to the flowing water. Again, jumping back diagonally across the country to Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, just a few miles from where the Space Center is, there is a beautiful wildlife refuge, great for canoeing. There are places to drive across to the refuge. This was just before sunrise one morning when we were doing a bird photography workshop, and really wasn't enough light to use a long telephoto and get good images of the birds as they were starting to leave their roost and go to where they were hunting for the day. But I got this beautiful shot, again, fairly wide angle at 28 millimeters on a full frame sensor of birds just kind of flying across in front of me. So we have the beautiful reflection, this fantastic sky, and the birds add some interest to the shot. So look for those kinds of things again early and late. Sometimes serendipity happens. This particular location is actually just kind of a city park in Burlington, Vermont. And for the event I was there for, it rained for almost 2 solid days. So picture taking was limited, but the colleague that I was there with, this was like 8:30 or 9 in the evening. The sun was down. And he called me and said, "Have you looked outside?" And I said, "No." And he said, "It's cleared up." And we had talked about these whale tails, this sculpture called Reverence by an artist, Jim Sardonis. And these are probably 15, 20-foot tall whale tails in a berm right next to an interstate highway. So I kind of went out with some preconceptions of what I wanted to do. It was nighttime. You don't get great night skies when you're in a city, but it can be done. You want to get into a lower area where the city lights are kind of above you. And here I kind of got a little bit of the Milky Way, that reddish hue just above kind of the just to right of center in the sky is actually there was still some fog because of the leftover rain that was rising and kind of wafting through occasionally, and that's taillights from cars reflecting off of that. The blue was those blue obnoxious headlights that somebody had on a car passing by the freeway. So again, that was kind of lucky. That happened during the middle of the exposure. You don't always have things like that happen. And I have a bunch of other shots where, just traditional kind of yellowish or warm colored headlights, as you can see on the left-hand side of the sculpture there, happen. So again, you hope, you plan, and sometimes you get lucky too. Moving on to telephoto lenses, very important. Again, this is the blue hour just after sunset. This big bull elk was kind of relaxing and ruminating and chewing there, and I was across a busy street, so I wasn't disturbing the animal at all. Very important when you're photographing wildlife to keep a respectful distance. If you start to change their behavior, you're already way too close. The national parks generally recommend for big animals like elk and deer and bighorn sheep, you want to stay at least 25 yards away. 50 for bison, and probably and really more like the recommendation now is 100 for bison and for wolves. So keep that in mind if you're in those kinds of situations. Keep a respectful distance. It keeps the animals from getting upset. It keeps them from getting aggressive, and again, it keeps that balance so that we don't all get kicked out of the state and national parks. Another great example here of the bighorn. Again, this is probably a 25 or 30% crop. In addition to using the Tamron 100 to 400, I had it was at 400, and I had the 1.4 times teleconverter, so I was close to effective 600 millimeter equivalency there, and again, a fair amount of crop in the finished frame, but the right color of light. Again, nice clear sky background, and I got that important catch light on the ram's eye there, so that again, there's that twinkle in the animal's eye, always important. Back to Yellowstone. First thing in the morning, the bison. It was about I think 16 below when we walked out of our hotel, maybe a couple of degrees warmer, 16 below Fahrenheit by the time we got into the park. And this bison and its calf had just stood up. She still had that morning frost on her coat, which happens. It was cool and humid, so that frost occurred. So I had that for a nice foreground in the weeds, and it was on the animal's head and shoulders as well. So a nice shot there. Again, far enough away, and this was shot from a vehicle, so the bison there are kind of accustomed to vehicles. We were less than the recommended 75 to 100 yards. It was right next to the road, but it wasn't paying attention to us. It was just kind of doing its morning stretch. You can't always get incredibly close to wildlife, but don't stop shooting when you see the wolf pack that someone had spotted. This was at another time, and again, well below zero in February in Yellowstone for a tour from the north side. The shot of the bison was from the west entrance. And this was from just inside the north entrance, well, a fair distance inside the north entrance. We were leaving the park. We had seen a lot of great wildlife, but coyotes, and we were hoping for wolves. We saw a coyote running, and somebody yelled wolf when it was actually a coyote, but it was being chased by wolves, and the wolves were chasing the coyotes away from their bison that they had either discovered a winter kill, or they had taken down a day or two before. We weren't quite sure what the scenario was, but a couple of wolves, after chasing the coyotes away, had come back to grab an afternoon snack. So again, a lot of negative space there, but you certainly know that that's the wolves in Yellowstone. So worth taking and making maybe making a print or an enlargement from. Sometimes, midday you have really flat light, it's overcast, you want to maybe convert your photos. I always shoot in color in the field, but I'm certainly not afraid to convert to monochrome, to black and white when I come back. I will occasionally shoot monochrome in the camera, because if I shoot both JPEG and RAW, so I have JPEG images that are immediately finished in the camera, but fairly small files. And then my raw files, even if I do convert to monochrome in the camera, the raw file still records all of the color data. So when you're editing and you open up the raw file, it'll open up as a color file, even though you told the camera to shoot monochrome. So you have that extra data. But I generally shoot color and then convert in post. Again, there are a lot of great post-processing products. I like to use the Nik software from marketed by DxO. It's been owned by a couple of other companies over time, and they just did a major update, which I haven't paid for yet, but I probably will. But their Silver Effects Pro does some fantastic work with converting your images to black and white. And then the all-in-one zooms. Tamron makes, we really, for years, our reputation was all about all-in-one lenses. A single lens that you could put on your camera that's going to give you a wide angle, decent telephoto, close-up capability all in one, and give you sharp image capability all the way throughout. This was in a state park that I like to take my RV to, 30 minutes from my house once in a while, when I just need to, shake off the dust and get out and even do some more or less urban camping. This bald eagle is on a dead cottonwood tree that has since halfway toppled, so you don't see the eagles perching on it as much, but they still occasionally land there. And I've seen at different times of year, I've seen not sandhill cranes. I've seen all kinds of birds on it. Sometimes you just go blank. Again, late afternoon, got that beautiful warm light, and again filled up the frame from across a pond, and shooting from a road here, and got that nice warm light on the animal. And you noticed it's not centered in the frame. I'm using that rule of thirds for the positioning in the composition. City parks are a great place to go for urban wildlife, small birds. This Kensington Metro Park, you will see sandhill cranes here. It's in metropolitan Detroit, and the gift shop there even sells wild bird seed that you can buy and put in your hand, and the birds are so accustomed to humans that they'll land in your hand and eat out of your hand if you want to. So this black-capped chickadee was kind enough to pose for me. Now you'll notice the branch. Small birds, it's much easier to capture them when they've landed rather than when they're flying, just easier. Larger birds, much easier to photograph when they're flying, but small birds in flight, it's a real challenge. So you'll find most birders even capture small birds when they've landed. The compositional tip here is you'll notice how that branch is just a scotch above the bottom corner. So try and keep elements like that from intersecting right into a corner. Have them just a little above or below a corner. You'll notice also it exits just out of the corner in the frame. Now in the camera, this was cropped slightly for composition to keep the branch because it pretty much did enter and exit right in the corners. Sometimes in the field, you do have to rely on cropping in post to get your composition just the way you want it, of course. Other cool places to go, balloon festivals often happen in parks, state and national and local parks. This is the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta, where you'll have sometimes mass ascensions of 500 or more balloons during the course of a launch day. And they always do a dawn patrol, very fun. Now, this is a huge event. Sometimes 500,000 people will go to it. So it's crowded, and you're going to be shooting over top of people's heads, as you can see along the bottom of the frame. But once the balloons start to launch, and again, this is well before sunrise. And again, this is a situation where I did set my camera's white balance to incandescent. So I got that. So I didn't have the really, really orange glow of the flames, but I also got a nice cobalt blue, and the colors just look a little more natural with less post-processing issues. So something to think about there when you're shooting balloons. They don't always have these pre-dawn balloon launches like this, although a lot of balloon fiestas will set up balloons at dusk and do what they call an evening glow, where they won't launch, but they'll inflate the balloons and fire the burners, and you get that wonderful kind of effect that you saw there. Now, it's also a good thing when you're using an all-in-one zoom like the 18-400, one of our most popular lenses for traditional DSLR cameras. It is a Di2 lens, so it's designed for the crop sensor cameras, although it works fantastically well on, I found, on the new generation of mirrorless cameras with the body maker adapters, because the light circle is stood off from the focal plane enough that it puts almost the complete circle of light on a full frame sensor. So very valuable there. Now, again, Monument Valley is another native tribal park. So it is an area where there are places where you're going to have a reservation and a guide that will tour you through. But here, just the vastness of going from that 75-degree field of view at 18 millimeters, and then zooming in to 400 millimeters and having a 4-degree angle of view, all with one lens. There was a circular polarizer used in this shot, kind of that midday shot. And you can't always get to cool places like this at sunrises or sunsets. So you take your polarizer, maybe you take graduated neutral density filters too. Again, the folks at Looking Glass can counsel you on great filters like that to add to your kit that you may not already own. So those kinds of things are very useful to you as well when you're forced to shoot midday. Experiment with things, and this kind of leads into my next section. I made this photograph using a trigger device that sees the the lightning and triggers the shutter for me. So the camera is actually aimed where I'd hoped the storm was going to hit. I did a manual exposure of the clouds. It was late afternoon. You can see that that warm color of light on the horizon. And so I just set up a composition in hopes that lightning would strike somewhere in the frame. And it's real hit or miss. I probably have 60 other shots where there's where, you know, lightning triggered the device. But it wasn't in the frame because it sees a pretty wide field of view. I use a device called the Lightning Bug Trigger from MK Controls. They're a pretty small company. They don't sell through too many camera stores, so this is something you may have to go on the interwebs to find. But just a very handy little tool for shooting lightning or even fireworks, but especially daytime lightning because it sees the actual infrared that happens just before the visible flash of light, and that's enough to trigger it and get you spectacular shots like this. So experimenting like that is a lot of fun, and that leads me into experimentation. Have fun with panoramas. Set your camera up on a tripod, put it vertical, go to kind of a medium focal length. I find that the best focal lengths are between about 60 millimeters and about 90 millimeters. So again, do a series of vertical shots, overlap a lot. There are even specific panoramic panning heads that you can add to your tripod that will do click stops for you, so it makes it easier rather than, you know, kind of guessing at it. But this is actually 11 different frames. Again, it's a situation where you definitely do want to use manual exposure. You want to kind of expose for somewhere in the middle of the scene, get a good exposure, and then just manual expose for the rest of them. But what you actually have, these are a couple of shots just out of the middle of the group, and then you merge them together in your post-processing. Lightroom does this. Photoshop, of course, does it, and a lot of other post-processing programs allow some sort of merging program like that, so that you can create beautiful panoramas. And this might make the previous shot there. This shot might make a good 10 or 12 by 40 or 50 inch print. So a lot of fun doing experiments like that. HDR is something that I have a lot of fun with. I do it sometimes with individual exposures, as I did here, because the camera that I had didn't have built-in HDR. A lot of the newest cameras, if you check your owner's manual or again talk to the folks at the store, they can explain to you how to do in-camera HDR. You're going to want to be on a tripod most likely because the exposures can get longer, but the camera can actually do an HDR where it will take just a quick burst of 2 or 3 shots and merge them together in a final JPEG for you. This was shot as I mentioned, I shoot both JPEG and RAW. This was 3 RAW files. So I already had 3 huge files that were merged together in post. And I did those, the underexposure, what the meter thought was right, and then the overexposure to get that full range. This is about 20 minutes after sunset. So down in the canyon there, it was dark even to the human eye. And the sky was still really bright because there was that sun reflecting off of the clouds after it had gone down. So you need that wider dynamic range than the camera is capable of giving you in a single exposure. So I have fun with that a lot. Playing with longer shutter speeds can be fun too. Maybe there's people in the frame that you don't know. You don't want to go up to them and say, hey, I made a photograph. Would you mind signing a release? Or something like that, so that I can, potentially again publish this photo somewhere. So with a long exposure like that, the person's not going to be identifiable, and you're not going to have to worry about a release situation. You can do sometimes real long exposures. This is 40 minutes worth of 30-second exposures of the night sky pointed up where again the North Star Polaris was kind of in the lower third-ish of the frame. and I just again locked the camera down, used an interval timers. A lot of new cameras have interval timers built in. If not, there are great aftermarket interval timers that again, it'll fire the shutter every so often, and then the camera does whatever exposure you've set it for. So this was a lot of fun. And time lapses, of course. Again, back in kind of your neighborhood, the Marin Headlands, up above and to the west of the Golden Gate. Be careful when you go here. I know that cars get broken into there all the time. So take all your valuables with you if you get out to go to shoot, because you don't want to have a break-in. Of course, I had that happen on my way to Yosemite last year in a fast food parking lot. So it can happen anywhere. But be careful when you travel. Another thing to be wary of. But again, this is a series of exposures made over about 15 minutes at a sixth of a second at f16 ISO 100, and merge them together in post, and you get this beautiful kind of motion time lapse like this. Now you're going to need big fast memory cards for all of these kinds of things where you're doing motion shots like this. Again, the store can advise you want fast write speeds on your memory cards. You're going to want to be, have a big hard drive to download to, because you're going to be downloading often hundreds of photos, and the fastest processor you can afford on your computer, so that doesn't take, as this did a couple of years ago on an older computer, took a half a day to render. So again, the fastest computers are always worthwhile investing in if you want to do art like that. Winding down here, a little bit about Tamron. We have the best warranty in the industry, 6 years on every lens that's bought new from an authorized Tamron retailer. And of course, Looking Glass is an authorized dealer, so no worries there. And that goes from our most affordable lens to our highest end, most expensive lenses. We believe in standing behind our product. We build a great lens. We know we do, and we're happy to support it. In addition to that support, our standard in warranty business turnaround time on a repair is 3 business days. So it may take 3 to 5 days, depending upon how you ship, unless you want to pay for faster shipping to get across the country to our service department. But once we receive it, like if it gets to us, say Monday morning, a technician is going to get the lens, they're going to evaluate it, they're going to do the work, and they're going to get it put, tested and QC'd and everything, and back out to you on Wednesday afternoon. So it's back on the way to you very fast. You don't have to pay any extra for that. You don't have to join a professional services program as some companies make you do to get that fast service turnaround. Again, we believe in our products and we want to support you and keep you shooting. Now, due to ongoing COVID staffing concerns, it's going to be probably, I think, sometime later in June before we get 100% of our staff back in the building every day. So it might be a day or two longer on service turnaround time, but still by far and away the best service turnaround in the industry. Typically for even in warranty repairs, you're talking weeks or sometimes months, unfortunately, from some manufacturers. So we wanted to be on top of that. We're very proud of that. And we've invested in the repair parts and the number of staff technicians to be able to carry this out. So that's something we're very proud of. Another cool thing, if you love Tamron lenses, and maybe you're already aware of this, if you have 3 or more Tamron lenses, you can qualify at no charge to become part of our VIP Club program. You can go to Tamron's website for more details on this, but we have different tiers. 3 or 4 lenses are our silver tier. You get swag, you get a subscription to our magazine. You get cool stuff, and you even get discounts if you have an out of warranty repair. Fun things like that, useful things like that. And we have monthly webinars that are just for VIPs. And when you get to higher tiers, you can even get, when you're to the platinum tier, which is 6 or more lenses, lifetime warranty on any new lens that you invest in, and an invitation to a summit type workshop where you pay to get there, but we pay for your food, your lodging, and several days of hands-on education in the field in a cool place. So if you're a Tamron fan, definitely worth looking into. And again, with as few as 3 lenses that have been purchased in the last 10 years, you become a member. So go to Tamron's website for that. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm Tamron Tech Jeff. Follow me if you care to. And we'll open up now for questions. I see a bunch in the queue. Thanks again to Looking Glass. Again, I share my shop local sentiment. It's just so important to support local business, and you get that feedback from all the professionals in the shop who know photography, who are passionate about it. Digital and film photography, they're going to be able to help you out, and it's just a great place to visit, to talk to the staff, and again, always one of my favorite in-person visits. So I look forward to seeing you all again in person sometime soon. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll open up again now for questions, if I can get my cursor to shut that off.
Thanks so much, Jeff. That was awesome. You are great. And we do miss seeing you in the store. We did have a few questions pop up. Ben, did you manage to keep track of all those? I just kept chatting.
Yeah, well, there's a few. First, somebody was asking, which you kind of got into a little bit, Jeff, with you're talking about using the Nick software, but wondering to what extent you use what software platform you're using in post. Is it mostly Photoshop? Are you using Lightroom? Because I know that's a pretty easy one to use. So
yeah, my wife uses Lightroom a lot, and she keeps saying, why don't you use Lightroom for the editing you do? It does everything you need. But I just learned on Photoshop, and it's on the computer, but I haven't really transitioned. Although if I'm editing on my iPad, I do use Lightroom Mobile, and it's just one of those things in my head. And there are, if you're not an Adobe fan, there are all kinds of other programs that you can use that are everywhere from free to very inexpensive. So if you don't want to pay for that subscription, again, a lot of other choices. The Nick I use for doing finishing touches I just find easier, because you can put little control points on things and say, I want this a little darker, I want this a little lighter, I want a little more color, or whatever here and there. And Nick just makes it very easy to do. So I worked for their original distributor back in the day, so that's how I got involved with Nick. And again, it's one of those old familiarity situations.
Sure. And then another question, somebody asking specifically about using, if there's would be any kind of sharpness degradation if using the 150 to 600 with the teleconverters 1.4. I believe the camera was a Canon 5D Mark IV.
Very little image degradation with the Tamron matched converters. We make a 1.4 and a 2 times that are specifically designed for just a very few lenses. They'll work and fit on the 150 to 600, the 100 to 400, which I used an example in this presentation. And you'll notice how sharp that bighorn was. It'll also work on the 70 to 210 f4 and the 70 to 200 2.8, but those are the only lenses that'll even fit on. So they're actually built and optimized for just those lenses. So they're designed to be part of the optical formula. So there's very little contrast loss, very little loss of sharpness. And you know, they're not a cheap $129 teleconverter. Those are available too. But like anything in photography, you get what you pay for. So these are designed to, you know, to be a serious working tool. Like any teleconverter, however, the 1.4 does cost you one stop of light, and the 2 times costs you 2 stop of light. So depending upon your camera, you may not be able to autofocus, especially with the 2x converter. Now, I noticed recently I was out. There are about 100 eagles that winter near where I live, and I'm always kind of following them around and trying to get good photos of them. And I put my 150 to 600 with the 2x on a Nikon Z camera. And because it uses a different type of autofocus than a traditional DSLR uses, except during live view, I was able to pretty well focus and track even with the 2x, even with the 2-stop light loss. So I'm very pleased that as we evolve into mirrorless, that may be a more useful tool than it has been in the past. So again, I kind of went off on a tangent there.
All good. It was a solid answer. Thank you. And I think I'm going to go ahead and address really quickly that the majority of the rest of the questions that I am seeing in the chat all revolve around R mount, Z mount availability from Tamron. I know you guys can't really, I mean, you can tell them.
Yeah, if we knew, we couldn't say anything.
Yeah, if we did know, we couldn't tell you. Even with new lenses that are introduced by the factory, we just started shipping the 150 to 500 for Sony mount. Ben and I knew about this lens like 2 weeks ago, basically, maybe 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
You know, the factories, and this goes for every manufacturer, they don't tell the folks in the field what's coming until they're ready to announce it. Same kind of thing with lenses for new mounts. Now, with the Sony mount, where we have kind of a full line of lenses from ultra wide to ultra telephoto now, when Sony first started making mirrorless bodies, they didn't give us the licensing or anything to do that. And then all of a sudden they decided, okay, we've recouped enough of our investment in this new platform. We can start licensing other companies to build lenses. And there were a few reverse engineered lenses, as you're seeing happening in the R and Z mount. But until the body makers are really ready to release, the electronics packages and things like that, we've got lenses. I'm sure our engineers are working on designs, but until they can make them work properly. And if you know Tamron lenses, if you used our lenses for any length of time, our lenses work natively pretty much on whatever camera you put them on that they're designed for. So that's something that we're going to maintain. And when the body makers do say, here's your green light, you'll probably see them shortly after, but I don't know when that green light's going to happen.
Yeah, that's one of those things that in our industry, each manufacturer holds tightly onto that information, as they should, and then they want to open it up to other companies. And for Tamron in particular, they're not gonna try it. They're prepared to build the thing, but they're not going to be able to release the thing until they're absolutely certain that it is going to be compatible with your equipment. So just keep in mind that, patience is a virtue in this case, because you want it to work. Until you get the engineers all talking, it's not going to be completely compatible.
And I'm sure the engineers are talking and going out for, karaoke and and adult beverages every Tuesday night. But again, there's still that, it'll happen when it happens, and we just don't know.
So in other words, we know it's going to happen someday. We just don't know when.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to go ahead and briefly talk about, while we've still got some folks on here, we had such a phenomenal like list of national parks that people were putting in at the very beginning of this chat, at the beginning of this meeting. I invite you all to take a good look at that and think about the places where you want to go. There's a huge amount of our national parks on our earth that are obviously under degrees of threat for various reasons. So I encourage everybody to get out there and take pictures while you can. I mean, we were looking at spaces, and I was talking in the chat about situations where, like, the Point Reyes National Seashore has a herd of Thule elk, which is super cool and an amazing opportunity. But those guys are under threat due to the drought.
Yep.
We don't know how much longer we're really going to have them. And then you showed something from Merritt Island. My family was actually in Merritt Island. My uncle was actually a NASA engineer, and yeah, cool stuff. But
Yeah.
there used to be enormous populations of manatees in that area. Those guys are completely under threat due to loss of seagrass. And so while you have the opportunity to get to these places, photograph these animals, please share those images with us. I'm really hoping that through our imagery, we're able to help save some of these species, help save some of the planet, actually get the word out and the information out, because not only are you going to have a beautiful opportunity to see incredible creatures, incredible habitats that might not be here in the future, but you might be able to get it into somebody else's head that this is worth saving. So I encourage everybody to get out there and photograph nature or biodiversity, and let's keep talking about it, looking at our planet as though it's something that we care about. And if you can share those images, those stories, then we want to be, your store that will help push that message out further. Just hi, it's a message I'm going to push out. So send us pictures if you've got them. Send
Yeah.
us stories.
Absolutely. And another little thing, if you carry it in, carry it back out. And I usually find that I carry out more than I brought in because I want to leave the place better than I found it. Take an extra trash bag or something and pick up after those that are less thoughtful. That's just a little thing that I always encourage.
Always pack it out. Just take it with
Yep.
you. If you see it, just grab it.
Yep.
And Jillian was noting that the parks are getting incredibly crowded right now, and you need reservations far in advance. So make those plans ahead of time. Then you can plan your gear, and we can help you with those filters and those tripods and those
Yeah,
new lenses that you might need ahead of time.
absolutely.
Yeah, and there's so many places too, beyond national parks, state parks. There's so many good spots, especially around here, or wherever you are. Like Chris Austria is joining us again from Uganda and is about to head into a national park there. But wherever you are, there are plenty of opportunities to photograph parks and wildlife, even if they aren't the grand vistas of perhaps Yosemite. Or you pick one of the big ones that are probably really full with reservations that are booked out. Pick a little place, something you've never heard of before.
Yeah, there are national parks that are smaller than an acre in size, and you find cool things, and city parks and state parks too. There's so many great resources that are free or cheap. A national parks pass for the whole year is $80.
Amazing.
It's what a bargain. You go to 2 or 3 parks and it's paid for itself, and you have like where I live, Rocky Mountain National Park experimented with timed entry last year because of COVID, and because of, again, limited staffing resources. They're doing it again this year. I know Glacier is doing that. I think even Yosemite or Yellowstone is thinking about doing it in like off season and shoulder seasons just to control things a little better. And it's hard when you have bus loads showing up to control that, but be prepared to, like Jen said, make reservations in advance. And maybe like Rocky Mountain, if you go early or go in real late, they don't have the timed entry thing, so you don't have to be concerned about as much. But again, go early, like I showed you. If you get up there before sunrise, you're going to see what a lot of other people don't get to see.
Yeah. Oh, I did get a question just now about whether or not we will have the new 150 to 500 at Looking Glass, and the answer is yes. We do have them on order. If you want to pre-order yours now, that helps us figure out how many we need to keep on order, because there will be limited availability. So by all means, get us those pre-orders as soon as possible. We are still under a manufacturing crisis, along with all the rest
Yeah.
of other crises in the world.
Yeah, we know that we're not going to be able to build that lens fast enough to meet customer demand for a while. So definitely get in line. And I'll tell you this, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to go put my name on the list at that big mail order place because I know I'll get it faster. You might not, unless you're number, 1 through 10 on the list. There's still allocations. And if you're, 11 through 999, you're not going to get it any faster, and probably will get it more likely, more quickly if you show up local.
Totally.
Have this
I'll add a piece to that too, in that one of the things I really like about Tamron as a company that they've always kind of impressed me was with how fair they are across the board, making sure that big mail order guy is not getting more than what a Looking Glass or somebody else would get. So they make sure everybody gets a fair treatment, and they divvy up what comes in across the board. So I 100% what Jeff said is what I also tell people. Like, the bigger they are, the longer the list is going to be.
It's very, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, if you have a pre-order in with us, or if you have something that you have given us money for, I am bugging manufacturers personally on a regular basis, reminding them that we have your money, the lens is paid for, and we aren't asking for much. So give it. In other words, I'm your advocate. I'm going to do everything I can to get you the gear you need. So by all means, our lists are short, and we fulfill them as quickly as humanly possible. All right. Anything else? I mean, I don't see any more questions popping up.
I did get one more question that I just want to touch back on, just to make sure that we get it covered. And Jeff, maybe you just first couple tips that come to mind. But somebody just mentioned that you'd shown off a lot of great blue and golden hour photography in the national parks. They were wondering, aside from your mention of using polarizers and ND filters and whatnot, if you have any tips or suggestions for photographing subjects like people or a structure or something within a landscape, not just a landscape.
Well, off hours are always a good thing to think about, early and late. Again, that's oftentimes why you see so many blue hour and golden hour things in my presentations, also because I'm working during the middle of the day. But it's, I try and go when I anticipate the crowds to be smaller. And usually that's first thing in the morning, or, dinner hour, or after in the evening. And I generally just don't get disappointed. Carry a small tripod. I have, I'm being shot right now with a mirrorless camera and a Tamron 17 to 35 that's on one of those Joby gorilla pods, I think they call them, that has the wildly adjustable legs. But it's just the right height on my desk that it works great. So I have one of those that I always carry with me, and I carry a little. And again, I'm the Swiss Army knife of traveling photographers. I have a little this little critter that's, I think, from Manfrotto, and this comes in. This is the bigger of their. They make this in 2 sizes, and then I'll carry a travel tripod, which kind of folds up over itself, which gives me reasonably good support. And if I have room in my suitcase, I'll even put a full size or nearly full size tripod in. So if I'm working out of a car, I don't have to travel too far with a big heavy tripod, I'll always take the extra stability of that. And just little things, a remote release, either a wired or a wireless one. Jen and her staff can explain all about those. And again, when you're on a tripod, that having something that is a distance where you're not jamming your finger down on the shutter button. If you're doing longer exposures, that's also going to give you sharper photos. Slow down. I know the desire or the ability is there with digital to just press the button and click 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 and go, but stop, take some time, look at your compositions, review your shots in the field, maybe shoot 10 images of something rather than 50, or if you are going to really go in depth, really work the scene and know that you're going to have a lot of similar photos and a lot of things that you'll end up culling. So again, bigger memory cards, bigger hard drives, always important. I've even with my laptop, I've started carrying one of these. This was the biggest one they bought it. This is a SanDisk solid state drive that is a terabyte. And I think they make it in a 2 and 3 terabyte now. But just a handy backup. Solid state, you don't have to worry about quite as much about a drive failing when it's solid state, and that gets plugged into my laptop to download the images pretty much immediately when I get back to the room for the day or wherever I am. And again, I lost. And I'm carrying them in separate places now too, because as I mentioned, I had a car burglarized outside of SFO when I stopped for lunch a year and a half ago, and lost cameras, 3 lenses, a laptop, and unfortunately hard drives that hadn't been backed up. So backup too.
All good reminders. All good
Yeah.
reminders. Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it. It looks like we are pretty my dogs just started getting a little bit nuts, so
Your
I
dog's going,
gotta
Mom, need some attention here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is fantastic.
Uncharacteristically, mine have not yet, but usually they're also standing right here staring at me like.
I saw it as it was about to happen. It was like mute now. Mute. My dogs are big. They make a loud boof when it's time to do something. All right. I really appreciate it. As always, Tamron, love having you here. Jeff, great to see you. Ben, as always, you are such a handy guy to know. Helping us get those lenses for our customers as quickly as possible. And of course, thank you to our community. You guys are the best. This is like getting together with a group of friends every single time and just chatting about the stuff that we love. So I look forward to seeing you all next time. All right, everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next
Bye.
week.
Everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.